What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by no co-host today, just getting in a quick practice report slash takeaways and recap for the first week of New York Giants OTAs. So an exciting time for the Giants, finally kicking off their practices of the season as they get ready, of course, for training camp next month and the regular season shortly after that. But right now, just doing the unpadded OTA practices. And so as you know, it's a little bit difficult to take away anything for the offensive and defensive linemen, but for the skill position players and even the linebackers to some extent, and of course the quarterbacks, you can take away plenty. And we do have plenty of takeaways and some fun stuff to talk about. So going to go ahead and dive right into it and waste no more time. And I'm going to start off talking about the New York Giants treasure chest. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, this did go viral on social media. The Giants have a treasure chest now that they give to that they use whenever the team gets a turnover. And I think it's pretty cool. I'll read an excerpt from Giants.com about it. The big blue coolers on wheels at practice aren't just for holding water and Gatorade on the sideline anymore. There is now a wooden 2-foot long and 1-foot high treasure chest perched on top of one. The only time it gets unlocked is when the defense forces a turnover, and new defensive assistant Grant Morgan appears to be the props captain. So as I'm sure you guys have seen, turnover chains and different things like that in college football, the Giants implementing their own version of this with the treasure chest at OTAs right now. I think it's an exciting way to get the players involved and get them more excited and hyped up when they make the plays. So want to throw that out there. I know a lot of Giants fans found that to be really cool. And part of that, we do get an excerpt in the Giants practice report where Brian Dable is encouraging them to go get the treasure chest. And he dropped a really awesome quote. Smell blood, go get another. That's what Brian Dable shouted to the defense shortly after Paulson Adebo got an interception during Friday's practice. So a couple of takeaways. First of all, I like the culture that the Giants are building. I think it's fun and exciting. The treasure chest is a novel idea. But on top of that, Paulson Adebo, let's talk about him. Paulson Adebo is a player that the Giants signed to a really big, expensive contract, about $17 million per season. And at the time, there were some question marks. Would he be healthy for the start of the season? Obviously, he had a devastating injury last year, broken femur. I think it was a compound fracture as well. So it was a pretty rough go, pretty rough injury for Paulson Adebo. But he's fully healthy. He's participating 100% at OTAs, and I think that's a really positive and encouraging sign, something that we weren't completely certain of when the Giants signed him back in March. Would he be ready for OTAs? Would he be ready for training camp? 100% ready, out there performing at OTAs and catching interceptions, getting the turnover treasure chest. So some exciting stuff there. Definitely excited to see our CB1 take the field this year. Paulson Adebo, as I've mentioned, is a player who, when the ball is in the air, he gets his hands on the football. He is an absolute ball hawk from the cornerback position. I know that term is usually used for safeties, but hey, this guy has more forced incompletions from the cornerback spot than anybody over the last 2 seasons, and he missed like 10 weeks with a broken leg. So Paulson Adebo, an exciting addition for the Giants, already making his presence felt at OTAs, getting the turnover treasure chest. So wanted to mention him. Another player that I think is worth mentioning also has gotten the turnover treasure chest, Dane Belton. Dane Belton is a player that when we were previewing OTAs here on the channel, I mentioned him in one of our recent live streams as a player who you should keep an eye on. That's a kid who, you know, when the Giants drafted him in 2022 in the 4th round, he had aspirations of eventually making his way into the starting lineup. So far, he's been just a rotational guy, a guy who's moved in and out of the lineup, has been a backup, you know, goes in when somebody's injured and has contributed quite a bit on special teams. But quietly over the last few years, Dane Belton has racked up a pretty impressive resume. Through 3 seasons in his young NFL career, he's forced 9 turnovers, or at least been involved with 9 of them, because a few of them are fumble recoveries. But he's been involved with 9 takeaways, and he has a career high of only 42% of defensive snaps. And last year was when he made that career high, of course, due to injuries at the safety position with Tyler Nubin going down early or prematurely due to his injury. But Dane Belton played 42% of snaps last season, a career high, which isn't even a whole lot. And he had 55 total tackles, which was also a career high. So he played some good football. And again, this is a player who, anytime he's on the field, seemingly finds a way to get his hands on the football. That was the Giants' defense's biggest problem last year, their inability to get their hands on the football. They had among the lowest total of takeaways in the league last season. They had only 5 total interceptions, which ranked 31st in the NFL. They had a record-breaking 10-week drought without recording an interception. I think it was actually like a 12-week drought. It was something insane from week 1 to week 13 or something of those sorts. So they went forever without forcing a turnover. This defensive backfield did. But Paulson Adebo, as I mentioned, is a player who has more forced incompletions, which is pass breakups and interceptions, than anybody over the last 2 years. And then as well for Javon Holland, a player who has a resume with a bunch of forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, and of course interceptions. So then you also add Dane Belton to the mix, a young player who sure is a rotational reserve guy, but I think he's earning himself a role on this Giants defense, earning a bigger spot in this rotation because he does have a knack for the football. His ability to get his hands on the ball is evident through his NFL career and even dating back to his collegiate career at Iowa. And now that he's shown up at OTAs, he's already snagged 2 interceptions, I believe. He is proving that he has the ability to be a playmaker on the defensive backfield end of things. So really like Dane Belton, again, a player that I thought everybody should keep an eye on as he continues to fight for a larger role in this Giants defense. I really think now he's earning it. It's only OTAs. It's not a padded practice. There's no physicality. I understand all that. It's very early, but he's performed this way throughout his career silently and consistently. And he's continuing to do it. And I know that Tyler Nubin and Javon Holland are ahead of him on the depth chart at the safety position. But I think that having another good safety, a third good safety in Dane Belton, will allow the Giants to get even more creative with their scheming on the defensive side of things. Now they can run more big nickel packages with those, of course, 5 defensive backs, but one of them is a safety / cornerback hybrid, or the cash defender, the safety / linebacker hybrid, right? There's a few different ways that you can do that. And then, of course, now the Giants could maybe even start throwing out the dime package if they wanted to, put 6 defensive backs on the field. They ran dime, I believe, at one of the most infrequent rates in the NFL last season, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, that was largely due to the lack of depth that they had in the defensive backfield. But with Dane Belton continuing to improve and play well at practice, and with Drew Phillips emerging and Deonte Banks hopefully taking a step forward, now Adebo and Holland added to the defense, I mean, there's 5 solid players right there. And you've also got Cordell Flott who rotates in. Giants actually do have the depth and flexibility now to run a little bit more dime packages if they so choose on 3rd and longs and really just turn those pass rushers loose and sit back. So there's definitely a lot of different ways that they can get Dane Belton involved, and I'm hoping that they do because for me, I think that he's earned it. I think that he's earned the ability to play more this season. 42% of snaps last year. I think that he could play about the same amount this year in a rotational role, or maybe even more, maybe push to 50% of snaps. So definitely want to give a big shout out to Dane Belton for a really solid first week of OTAs practice, 2 interceptions, like I said. The other player who had an interception and got himself a treasure chest was Micah McFadden. Micah McFadden had an interception this weekend. I want to remind everybody, this kid is entering the final year of his rookie contract. 4 seasons in the NFL this year, which is kind of crazy. Time is really flying by for these guys. I remember when we were talking about Micah McFadden as a young, rising second-year player. Well, when he was a young, rising second-year player, he rose to the occasion. And last year, as a third-year player, once again, rose to the occasion. Micah McFadden has gotten better every single season of his NFL career so far, and he's still only, I believe, 24 years old. So this is a player to me that the Giants would be wise to lock into an extension sooner rather than later. Why wait until he has another good season? If he's had 3 improving seasons in a row, that would lead me to believe that his 4th season will probably be better than his 3rd season, and he will continue to improve. If that's the case, when we get to the 2026 offseason, the price tag for Micah McFadden is going to go up quite significantly. So I think that now he's continuing to perform well at OTAs. We're getting into the summer. Let's see at training camp if he continues to perform well. If it's looking like Micah McFadden year 4 is even better than year 3, I think the Giants should go ahead and sign him to an extension sooner rather than later. They will save money in the long run if they do that. And they'll even free up cap space this offseason. And this regular season if they extend Micah McFadden. So he's like the number 1 extension candidate. Him and Jermaine Illuminor are the number 1 and 2 extension candidates that the New York Giants have. But I think it's important to note, McFadden, a former 5th-round pick that the Giants drafted in 2022, that 2022 draft class has largely been a disappointment, but quietly over the last couple of years, a couple of those players in the middle rounds have started to develop. Of course, I'm talking about Dane Belton, who we just discussed, and of course, Micah McFadden, who is a firm starter in the Giants defensive lineup alongside Bobby Okereke. And at times last year, there were games where he outperformed Bobby Okereke. Okereke making $10 million per season. He has 2 years left on his deal. I could see the Giants wanting to hand McFadden somewhere around $6 to $8 million per season. And hey, considering how well he's played, I think he's absolutely earned it. But if he plays well again this season, he could be commanding that $10 million per year next offseason. So again, Micah McFadden, one of the top extension candidates for the New York Giants, continuing to play well at OTAs, getting himself a takeaway treasure chest with an interception. I believe the interception was on Jaxson Dart as well, and more on Dart and the quarterbacks in a second here. But yeah, really impressed with what we've seen from the defense and little clips and highlights from OTAs, and of course, reading through the practice reports. It sounds like that 2022 class might be turning a corner. And speaking of which, 2022 class turning a corner, of course, Evan Neal. Now, I won't dive too deeply into the Evan Neal saga because I did do a live stream on Thursday, a pretty lengthy one at that. I think it was a full hour talking about just Evan Neal and Josh Azidu. But the update is Evan Neal is playing left guard for the Giants, and he's rotating in there and making that transition. So far, so good. And of course, when the pads do come on at training camp next month, that's when we really start to evaluate Evan Neal. For now, it's just kind of like a placeholder. Yes, he's playing left guard, but what is he doing at left guard? But I'll say this. Evan Neal does have an opportunity to earn himself some credibility with the coaching staff at OTAs. There's no hitting, there's no contact, there's no pads at OTAs, as I mentioned. However, with this transition that Evan Neal is making to left guard, he does have an opportunity to prove his dedication to the New York Giants, prove how motivated he is to succeed at left guard. And what I mean by that is be the first man in and the last man out. There have certainly been question marks about Evan Neal's work ethic. How determined is he? How much does he really put into the weight room and the technique and all of these different things, the off-season training? I think right now it's a do-or-die moment for Evan Neal. Again, the last season of his rookie contract, 2022 draft pick, number 7 overall. He has not lived up to expectations, not even come close. But if you do look at his stats last season, according to Pro Football Focus, that was easily the best football that he's played so far through his first 3 seasons of his career. So perhaps he was starting to improve down the stretch, and perhaps this switch to left guard could spark something in him. I'm hopeful. Now, I'm not banking on it. I still view Evan Neal firmly as a backup who has a lot to prove, a mountain's worth of things to prove. But I think that a good way for him to start to earn some recognition from the coaching staff would be to show up early and leave late and just work hard. And I think those are things that you can do at OTAs that everybody does during training camp. But if he can take OTAs extra seriously, maybe Evan Neal will get some of those first team reps during training camp, and perhaps he develops and maybe he becomes something for the New York Giants, which would be great since he is in the final year of his contract. And the last thing I want to see happen is him go off and have the Eric Flowers career arc or the Mekhi Becton career arc, where he becomes a guard for another team and then turns into a great starter or even Pro Bowl level starter like Mekhi Becton arguably was this past year for the Philadelphia Eagles. So that's the update on Evan Neal. Once again, he's not doing any drills against any players, no pads on, but let's see how he performs at training camp. Also, Josh Azidu, I did mention him. He is at left tackle, and obviously we had a long discussion in that recent live stream about that. And I'll say this, though. Just because he's at left tackle right now during OTAs doesn't mean he won't play guard as well during training camp. They're probably going to treat him as a hybrid, mix him in at both positions, the same way that they're doing with Marcus Bowe. I read that Marcus Bowe, the 5th-round rookie that the Giants drafted this year, took reps at right tackle and at right guard, so they're mixing and matching him at both spots. We know that Marcus Bowe also said during his intro press conference that he has the ability not only to play tackle, guard, but also center. So that's a player to keep an eye on as we do get through OTAs and into training camp. Where is he lining up? Is he primarily playing tackle? Is he primarily playing guard? How many reps is he taking at center, if any at all? We know John Michael Schmitz is entering the 3rd season of his career. He hasn't lived up to the hype either at the center position. He's been the starter. Now I think John Michael Schmitz is kind of due for a breakout because he is a talented player. And additionally, he has a lot of pressure taken off his shoulders with good quarterback play, hopefully behind him, under center with Russell Wilson reading pre-snap and making pass protection calls and all of that kind of stuff. So hopefully John Michael Schmitz does perform better. But at the worst case, the Giants do have a potential backup plan now with Marcus Bowe, who I think they want to be a right tackle. But again, that flexibility to play 3 positions on the offensive line, that's valuable. So circling that all the way back to Azidu, though, the reason I mention that is because we're seeing glimpses right now in OTAs of where people are lining up, but because they're not doing any hitting, they're not wearing the pads, it doesn't mean a whole lot, and they can always make changes throughout the summer. So Azidu might be playing left tackle right now. He might play left guard at training camp and some left tackle. And it even goes for Evan Neal. They moved him to left guard, which again, I think was the proper decision to move him to the left side where he was more comfortable in college. I like him at left guard, but that doesn't mean he's not going to take any reps at right guard during training camp. In fact, I would almost bet that he does, especially if he starts playing well at guard, because the right guard position is kind of open for battle. You've only got Greg Van Roten standing in the way. Yes, Marcus Bowe is also competing in that spot. But Evan Neal, if he starts playing well during training camp when the pads do come on, could he then start getting reps not only at left guard, but also at right guard? Could he then try and sneak his way into the starting lineup and take Greg Van Roten's job? He could. All these things are possible. Are they likely? No, but it is a possibility. So that's what I'll say about the offensive linemen. Keep an eye on where they align, not only during OTAs, because again, they're not hitting in OTAs, but when we get to training camp, this is basically a preview for training camp. That's what OTAs are for NFL teams, a preview for training camp. So one other big takeaway that I do have, no injuries, right? The New York Giants are healthy through the first week of OTAs. Nobody went down with an injury, thank God. You only had John Runyon, Andrew Thomas, and Malik Nabers not participating in the team drills. Of course, as we mentioned, Malik Nabers has a toe injury. It's been bothering him since college, apparently. Brian Dable revealed that. This is something that's been nagging since his final season at LSU. So hopefully, if they need to do anything in terms of procedures or any of those sorts of treatment options, Brian Dable said he doesn't anticipate that sort of thing. But if they do need to do anything like that, hopefully they get it done as soon as possible. So Nabers is ready to go. But the way that Dable described this was they're just being smart with it. Essentially, the way that I will translate what Dable said is Nabers doesn't need to practice in OTAs because he is the most talented player on the field. So why risk him suffering a greater injury to his toe? It doesn't matter. He'll be on the field at training camp, though. I can almost guarantee that. So I'm fine with them bubble wrapping Malik Nabers. I'm also fine with them bubble wrapping Andrew Thomas, considering how important he is to the team and how many injuries he's suffered over the last few years, including, of course, having the Lisfranc injury that ended his 2024 season prematurely. He had surgery on that. They should take their time with Andrew Thomas and just allow him to recover by his own means. So I'm fine with them bubble wrapping him. And then John Runyon Jr. as well, a player who historically throughout his NFL career has always been healthy. I believe this past season when he went down with an injury, it was his first time missing time in an NFL season. So just a bad break, bad luck for the Giants. What's new? But he also didn't do any team drills this week. So those are the three players that I know of, or at least that are prominent, that didn't practice this week due to injuries. But again, all of them are on track to be ready for training camp and obviously ready for the regular season, barring anything else unforeseen during camp. So positivity with the Giants, clean bill of health pretty much for the entire team, which is exciting stuff. Now, we will wrap up this conversation, of course, with the quarterbacks, because that is the most important position in the sport, and that is the most intriguing aspect of the New York Giants right now. This quarterback room is interesting. You've got Russell Wilson, a future Hall of Famer, who is honestly playing at a slightly above average league level right now at the quarterback spot, 36 years old, still throws a beautiful deep ball. I saw a clip that the New York Giants posted yesterday. It was about a 20-yard pass into the corner of the end zone for a touchdown to Zach Pascal, one of the Giants' backup receivers that they signed this offseason. So Russ, he still got it. The patented deep ball is his, and I think that his patented moon ball is going to transform the Giants' offense this season. I think that him throwing deep balls to Malik Nabers and all these other guys could really spark something special from this Giants offense. So really excited to see Russell Wilson. And the reason I bring up the quarterbacks is because we're going to be tracking their snap counts throughout the OTAs and throughout training camp. How many reps are going to Russ with the first team? How many reps are going to Jameis and Dart with the first team? Well, so far, what it sounds like is the overwhelming majority of first-team reps have gone to Russell Wilson, but both Jameis Winston and Jaxson Dart have gotten some first-team reps as they mix in and attempt to prepare for any emergency situations or just be ready on a moment's notice with chemistry with the first team in case Jaxson Dart gets handed the keys to the franchise, essentially. So don't know when we'll see Jaxson Dart. Know that we will see him in the preseason, and I am excited to actually watch the preseason just because I want to watch Jaxson Dart. So that should be pretty fun. But generally speaking, the quarterbacks, from what I've read, have played well. Jaxson Dart has played a lot with the third team, but he's thrown a lot of touchdowns against the third team, according to the practice reports. Threw one to Bo Collins yesterday, as well as little Jordan Humphrey. Bo Collins being the UDFA out of Notre Dame. His first touchdown that he threw during OTAs was to Antoine Wells Jr., the Ole Miss UDFA that the Giants signed as well. So By all accounts, Jaxson has been playing some good football, which is, of course, a positive sign for the rookie that the Giants drafted 25th overall this year. He's done a really good job through the first week of OTAs. On top of that, though, Russell Wilson has looked good as well with the first team, has definitely looked like the first team quarterback according to the practice reports. Meanwhile, the only one that I'd say is probably struggling is Jameis. A lot of these interceptions that I read in the practice report are coming by way of Jameis Winston, which isn't completely shocking. We all know who Jameis Winston is, and we know that he is a turnover machine. Also a passing yards machine, sure, but a turnover machine nonetheless. So not exactly a surprise there, but that's pretty much the recap on those three quarterbacks. The only thing that I have to say about Tommy DeVito is it seems increasingly likely that he will be released at some point. He has not received much playing time at all with the third team, with the second team, definitely not the first team. He's basically been like a scout team quarterback, like your typical camp arm. According to the beat writers who've been in attendance, they've said that he's basically been a camp arm. And it doesn't look like he's going to be on the roster this season, which is unfortunate for all of us Italian Tommy DeVito lovers. We know that he is going to live in infamy for his 3-game win streak in 2023, but unfortunately, it's a crowded quarterback room for the Giants. Jameis, Dart, and Russ are pretty much all locked in to make the roster, barring anything unforeseen. So Tommy DeVito, you can expect to either be released later this summer and hopefully placed on the practice squad, or if he gets a better opportunity elsewhere, maybe a team comes calling and Tommy DeVito goes and makes some cutlets in Pittsburgh or something. Who knows? But we'll see. And of course, we'll continue to update you on all of that and more surrounding the New York Giants. Last note, because I did forget to write this in my notes, but I did just remember it. Jalin Hyatt did make some plays. He did catch a couple touchdowns this week. Again, keeping a close eye on him because this could be a breakout season for him, we hope, with Russell Wilson, but also because of that report earlier this week that I discussed with Alex on the show, where Jalin Hyatt has a little bit of a history with his coaching staff now. Apparently got into some sort of a fight with the coaching staff, and he was in the doghouse, and he's working his way out of it. So again, keeping an eye on him, but also he did take snaps on special teams this week. So that means that the Giants do view him as a backup. But he has gotten some first-team reps with Malik Neighbors out due to that toe injury, and he has played well with them. So we'll see what happens there. And, of course, this was only the first week of OTAs. The Giants, they will be back on the practice field on Monday morning. And, of course, we will have a practice report and update and recap for you right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. Comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you listen to Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, catch you on the next one. Have a good one. And let's go New York Giants.
Perfect.